I've been wondering for years how the MAGA cult can argue against facts, logic, and science the way they do. So I decided to do some research on the methods the Trump cult uses to argue against facts, logic, and science. Once you understand these arguments, they lose all their power in every conversation you have in the future. Here are the 5 tricks the Trump cult uses to try and exhaust you and make sure a real argument never happens. 1. The straw man. You point out that Trump started a war with Iran without going through Congress. Your MAGA friend responds and says you hate America and want to see it destroyed. You never said that, but now you're defending your patriotism instead of talking about the war. Your original point is completely forgotten, and then they are nodding like they won the conversation. They argue against something you never said. This is called the straw man fallacy. They take your actual argument, replace it with something dumber and scarier, and argue against that fake version instead. In 1960, psychologist Peter Wason at the University College London found that the brain does not look for truth. It looks for the fastest way to protect what it already believes. So their brain is not asking if you are right. Their brain is asking how to make you look wrong. You're questioning the Iran war? You're siding with the enemy. Bring up Trump's criminal conviction? You have TDS. Ask about deportations to foreign prisons? And they'll claim you want open borders. They never argued with what anyone actually says. They just try to make sure that your argument never gets heard. 2. Whataboutism. You bring up Trump firing his attorney general. They say, what about Hillary's emails? You mention the Iran war started without Congress. They say, what about Biden? They never answer a single question because they know they can't answer it. This is called whataboutism. We are all very familiar with this one. Instead of responding to your point, they drag a completely different issue into the conversation to make you forget what you were talking about. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman at Princeton University found that the brain can only track a limited number of ideas at the same time. The moment someone introduces a second problem, your brain splits its attention. Now if you add a third and a fourth problem, your brain can't keep up and loses the original thread. They use whataboutism to exploit the brain's weakness on purpose. They do this because they saw other people do it, and it worked. It's not like they have some grand plan or anything. Every time they say what about, they're not making a point. They're running away from yours. Whataboutism is not a defense. It's a weak person's confession that they have no argument. 3. Ad hominem attack. You say Trump is breaking the law. They say you have Trump derangement syndrome and you hate America. Trump is still breaking the law, but now the conversation is about whether you are crazy instead of what Trump actually did. This is called an ad hominem attack. To put it plainly, they are just insulting you instead of answering any questions. The goal is to destroy your credibility before your argument even gets evaluated. Psychologist Robert Cialdini at Arizona University found that people do not evaluate arguments in a vacuum. We decide whether to listen based on who is talking. Ad hominem makes the audience question whether you are even worth listening to before they engage with what you said. When they cannot argue facts, they come after you instead. And the moment you start defending yourself, the argument is over and they win. 4. The slippery slope fallacy. You say the government should not be able to deport American citizens without due process. They say you want to let criminals pour into the country. You said nothing about criminals, but now everyone is arguing about something you never brought up. This is called the slippery slope fallacy. They take one reasonable idea and claim it will automatically lead to the most extreme outcome imaginable. No evidence, no logical steps. They're just creating fear. Psychologist Paul Ekman at the University of California, San Francisco, found that fear overrides rational thinking faster than any other emotion. Once your brain perceives a threat, it stops evaluating evidence and starts looking for an exit. The slippery slope is designed to trigger the fear response before your brain can ask whether the threat is even real. Scare people enough and they stop thinking. And people who stop thinking are easy to control. Just ask Fox News and Newsmax. 5. The burden of proof flip. Charlie Kirk built his entire career on this trick. He would show up to college campuses, make wild claims with no evidence, and demand that students disprove him on the spot. When students couldn't disprove him, Kirk declared victory and forced the student to give up the mic. He called it owning the libs. It was not a real debate. It was an ambush on unprepared kids. This is called the burden of proof flip. The person making the claim is always responsible for proving the claim. But Kirk and every conservative like him make wild claims with no evidence and then demand that you disprove those claims. Crazy, right? And here's why you can never win. You show them a court ruling, they claim the judge is corrupt. You show them a study, the science is corrupt. You show them a news report, the outlet is fake news. Every piece of evidence you bring just gets added to the conspiracy. There's no evidence they will accept because accepting evidence was never part of the deal. Psychologist Daniel Kahneman found that once someone believes something, their brain treats every piece of supporting evidence as proof, and every piece of contradicting evidence as part of the cover-up or conspiracy. Kirk was never really debating anyone. He was running a scam. In a real debate, the person making the claim has to prove their claim to be true. Kirk never proved anything. He just demanded you disprove him and called it a win when you couldn't. That is not a debate. That is a weak scam and only worked on kids who are under 20 years old. Most of these people have no idea what they're actually saying. They saw it on TikTok or they heard it on Fox News. They repeated it to you and called it an argument. They're not actually trying to win a debate. They're trying to feel superior to someone they are secretly intimidated by. That is all owning the libs ever was. Deeply insecure people using borrowed tricks to feel powerful for 5 minutes. Now that you know these tricks, you'll never have to fall for them again. They're what weak people use to try and trick smart people into arguing. When you're not smart enough to win a real argument, you kind of have to trick people.